Hi friends, welcome back to this video where today I'll be talking to you about how I managed to achieve a grade 9 in GCSE Religious Studies whilst in year 10. So this video is kind of going to relate to two main groups of people. Group number one is obviously those taking GCSE RS, RE, Religious Studies, whatever your school or exam board calls it. And the second group is anyone taking an exam early, whether this be a GCSE, an A-level, an IB, anything like this, taking an exam earlier than someone would expect you to take this exam. So for example, in this case, you are expected to take your GCSEs when in year 11, I took RS when in year 10. And it's quite different, and I don't think people will really prepare you for taking a GCSE early. And it's actually a really key thing that can really benefit you if you get it right. So if you're in one of them two groups, or you see yourself being in one of them two groups in the near future, stick around and I hope you enjoy this video. So yeah, just for a bit of context, I took 12 GCSEs altogether, and I did 2 of them early. So I did RS in year 10 and Citizenship Studies in year 9. So I kind of learned about the process of taking a GCSE early, and I think I've got some tips that can benefit you if you are taking a GCSE early that other people don't really talk about. Like my teachers didn't really help me out at this point. I kind of had to figure it out through trial and error, and that's not really that ideal. So yeah, hopefully this provides some good tips about taking GCSEs early. And kind of intertwined with those tips are going to be tips about GCSE RS specifically. So how to do the best you can in your exam in GCSE RS. And actually in year 10 for my GCSE RS course I only dropped 1 mark. The head of RS at my school actually emailed me before I got my actual GCSE result to tell me this. So I think I pretty much got that exam down to a T, even though my revision wasn't the most optimal. So the first thing that I'd say is try and exploit this opportunity and take advantage of this opportunity as much as possible. Chances are, if you're taking an exam, whether it be GCSE or A-level early, you're only going to be focusing on that exam or maybe one other. And the workload is not going to be as near as much if you were taking it on time. So this kind of means you have this whole year to focus on these 1 or 2 exams, 1 or 2 subjects. And this is something you won't have in the latter years when you're taking the rest of your exams for these qualifications. So what I'm trying to say here is really just don't let this opportunity go to waste. When I was in year 9 and 10, people were kind of just mucking about quite a lot and doing the minimum revision they could. And then they wouldn't get a grade they're proud of or happy with. And all this meant was that when they went on to the later years, so year 10 and 11, they weren't really that motivated because they almost gave themselves a glass ceiling. They thought, oh, this is as smart as I am, I can't achieve anything higher than this, what's the point of trying? And they didn't achieve as much as they could in their exams. However, the flip side of that is that if you really actively focus on this exam in this 1 year and try your very best, it can really motivate you. One of my good friends was sitting at a grade 4, grade 5, and was predicted grade 5s and grade 6s for their GCSEs in year 11. But they tried really hard for their GCSE RS in year 10, and they came away with grade 7. And this really motivated them throughout year 11, and they managed to get 7s and above across the board. And I really don't think this would have happened if they didn't get that initial motivation from doing really well in the GCSE RS. And I can definitely talk from personal experience about this. So when I achieved a grade 9 in year 9 and also a grade 9 in year 10, it really motivated me to try and achieve grade 9s in all my subjects. Even if this isn't your goal, I think doing well in these exams and actually having something to prove to yourself that you are smart, you are intelligent, and you can do better than you think, motivates you. And it's really beneficial and puts you in really good stead going into the rest of your exams. The second thing I'd say that relates more to GCSE RS or any kind of essay-based subject is to learn your chains of reasoning. So in the mark scheme for RS, or again, like I said, any essay subject, for your essay questions, there'll be different bands, and the top band or the top 2 bands are going to say more or less the same thing, and that is that your argument should be clear, coherent, and logical. Them 3 words or any synonyms of them 3 words are going to be name dropped in there, and that's what the examiner is looking for. And the words clear, logical, coherent kind of all mean the same thing, and it means that your analysis should flow nicely from one point to the next, to the next, to the next. For example, you may give your point, you may explain what you mean by this point, you may then give an example, and you may analyse this point further on. But it flows nicely, and the examiner can really clearly just follow along with the argument. So as an example, one of your points may be that a Catholic may argue X. And to back it up, you'd explain why a Catholic may argue X. And this way you maybe quote what you've learned in your lessons. So a Catholic may argue X because they have these values. Then you support this with evidence. So these values derive from maybe the 10 Commandments or a passage in the Bible, and you can quote that. And then you'd expand it further, what this quote means, and then how this would lead to, in this case, a Catholic having that opinion. And it's just having that clear and logical flow of reasoning that's really beneficial, and it will help you pick up the top marks. So it's really important to just pick up the skill of being able to logically and coherently create arguments in your exams. And the best way to practice this is doing past exam questions and getting your teachers to mark them. And this kind of leads nicely on to my next point, which is going to be that practice exam questions, and if not exam questions, at least exam planning. So if you're doing exam questions, I'd recommend, as always, under time conditions in exam-like scenarios, so a quiet room with no distractions. And initially, you don't have to do these by yourself. You can collaborate with friends, draw in your different ideas, and just get used to the process of going through an exam paper and either writing out the questions or doing at least a detailed plan of what your arguments would be and kind of the backbone of what your essay structure would be. And as always, you can ask your teachers to mark these, and I'm sure they'll be happy to. I mean, some of my best revision for GCSE RS in year 10 was literally just planning essays and going through past papers and making plans for each questions with my friends. It didn't really feel like work in its traditional sense, and it was just quite a nice way of getting the understanding and also drawing on different ideas. Because RS can be seen as quite a subjective subject, in terms of the wide scope of arguments that are available and different people interpreting the questions differently, by being with friends you can draw in all these different ideas and you can think a bit differently about questions and get a more holistic view of the question and therefore build a better response. So now focusing more on the opportunities granted to you by taking GCSEs early, and number one is that it gives you the opportunity to understand your learning style. So different people work better in different ways. For example, some people learn better from seeing something, others learn better from listening to it, and there's a massive scope of different ways you could learn. But if you can use this early exam to figure out the best way that you learn, it puts you in really good stead, like I said, going on to the next year's exams or the year after exams. So if you understand what is best for you in order to aid your learning, consolidating, revision and preparation, then this just sets you up really well for the rest of your exams. As a little personal example, during my RS revision in year 10, this was when I was first introduced to flashcards, and it's when I first properly started using them. Although they were paper flashcards, which I wouldn't actually recommend, it allowed me to understand how I worked best, which was by testing myself and asking myself questions to stimulate my brain to try and pick up the answers. So by doing an exam early, just view it as an opportunity to learn how you learn, and then utilise that when you do the rest of your exams later on. Which leads me quite nicely on to my next point, which was just to get into good habits and good practices about revising and preparing for exams. Habits such as having a retrospective revision timetable, having a spaced repetition planner / diary, setting up an account on a flashcard app or website, getting a good exam day routine, and I could go on and on. These are just good habits and practices that will, again, put you in good stead for the rest of your exams you do later on. To kind of sum it all up, in terms of taking the exams early, what I'd say is exploit the opportunity, understand how you work, and get into good habits and practices so that you can do the best you can in not only this exam, but the rest of your exams you will take later on. And then specifically for GCSE RS, what I would say is to learn your chains of reasoning, learn how to be logical, coherent and clear, and also really utilise exam and essay practice and planning. So yeah, really focus on that exam writing, exam structure, exam practice side of the course, and I'm sure you'll do great. That kind of concludes this video. Thank you very much for watching, and if you'd like to find out how I managed to achieve all grade 9s in my GCSEs, check out this video here. Also, if you'd like to check out the best website for GCSE maths revision, in my humble opinion, check out this video here. If not, no worries. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next Saturday.